Hello, beautiful people. This is Faisal. I'm a certified high performance coach, and I help entrepreneurs and professionals just like yourself live happy, fulfilled, and successful lives by raising their performance and potential in everything that they do. Today, we have a special guest, Amy Dimarino. She's a therapist. Hi, Amy. Say hi to everyone.
Hello, everyone.
She's a therapist and a counselor. She's going to be talking about how she got to where she is, and she's going to be giving us some very helpful tips in terms of our psychology, how we can handle some of the things that a lot of people don't know how to handle in their day-to-day life, as well as we'll talk about one important aspect of therapy is that a lot of people are scared of therapy. There's a huge stigma around therapy, and we're going to be discussing that as well. So before I get started with the bulk of the interview, I'm going to go to Amy, who's going to introduce herself, and she's also going to talk about how she got started, why is she so passionate about what she does, and from there we're going to take on the rest. Okay, go ahead, Amy.
Awesome. So I am Amy Dimarino. I initially got into the whole business. I went to school to be a personal trainer. I love physical activity. I love being active. I love exercising. So I thought, how can I make this my job? How can I get paid to do something that I love? I went to school for it. I got a great job in the city, but found I wasn't loving it so much anymore. I still enjoyed working out for myself, but I wasn't having as much fun teaching people how to do the exercise. But if anyone's ever had a personal trainer before, they might know that you talk a lot and you share a lot of details of your life. And I really found that aspect of it interesting. I loved hearing about people's lives and just different things going on. And I knew I wanted to move more into that aspect of it, but didn't know how or what it would look like. The idea of having to go to school for at least a 4-year degree was something that did not appeal to me. I didn't know how I was going to be able to be allowed to talk to people or have people think I would be someone worth talking to without having to go through something that didn't speak to me. And then one Kismet evening, I went to dinner with a friend of mine who happened to bring her sister along, and her sister and I ended up talking the whole evening about this program she was doing at an independent school that would lead towards a designation as a psychotherapist. And everything she was saying was exactly what I wanted to be doing. So I looked into the school, I met with the teachers, and I started that September. It was a 3-year, well, technically 5-year part-time program. So 3 years of classes and then 2 years of an internship. I had a couple babies during that time too. So my 5 years stretched more to 7. But I haven't looked back. I love absolutely every second of working with people, and that's where I'm at now.
That's great. That's great. That's a great story. And it's a great way to get into something. And the fact that you love what you do, the fact that you're interested in things, I think that's the best way. And that took me over 28 years to figure out what I wanted to do. But since then, I haven't regretted it either. So why don't you help our viewers understand what is it that you do as a therapist, and why is it important in people's lives?
So can only speak for personally for myself, like my style and how I sort of operate, or how I operate as a therapist for people is my focus is meeting the person where they are, witnessing them there, and maybe sharing things that I'm seeing that person potentially isn't seeing, or asking questions that they're not able to ask because they're in the thick of it. So if you were to imagine it like someone being in the middle of a tornado, well, they can't describe what the tornado looks like because they're standing in the middle of it. But because I'm not attached to the stories the same way that the person is, they're sharing their view from the inside, but I'm also able to share what I'm seeing from the outside. I'm witnessing them and potentially seeing ways out or ways that they can move that they can't while they're in the middle of their, I'm going to call it a tornado, or whatever the situation is that's going on in their life. So for me personally, I it's more witnessing where the person is, trying to really hear and understand where it is they would like to go, and then just asking questions. There's so much power in questions. People don't realize the answers that they have because the questions aren't being asked. So it's like a witnessing. I walk beside them as they journey through whatever it is they're journeying through until they decide that they no longer need someone to be walking with them at that particular part of their journey. Or maybe they need someone different to start walking with them now during the next phase of whatever it is they're walking through. And I forget what the second part was.
So I asked, what did I ask? The first one was that, what do you do as a therapist? And did I ask something else? I thought that's what I asked. Okay, well, we'll move on. We'll move on. Sure. We'll go to the next important question. And that one is very important because what I've found personally, and I spoke to you earlier before this interview about this, is that, I mean, I was born in a war-torn country, Afghanistan. And I can tell you that most people that I've met just from my country, I can tell you that they are traumatized in one way or another. Could be from mild all the way to a place where they really need help in one way or another. This doesn't mean that they're crazy or that they should be locked up or anything like that, because the people's fears around psychological assessment is always that, are they crazy? Nope, doesn't mean you're crazy. It's just the same as when you go to the doctor to get your checkup done. Doesn't mean that you're unhealthy, but what it does mean is that you're making sure that everything is good. And the reason our psychology is so important is because in terms of our mind and emotions, we know very little. We're taught very little within our lives, not only just in the East, but in the West as well. And since living here over the past 17 years in the West, in Canada, I've realized that the environments that we live in this might be much more positive environment for people, less stressful than a war zone. But it's also a place where people are stressed out consistently, just the way the environment is set up. So they don't really heal emotionally. They don't really heal mentally, and they keep moving forward. Life doesn't stop, but they don't have anybody to talk to in a more personal sense. A lot of people, even though people have close friends, family, and the rest, but very few people go deeper in their lives to figure out why is it that they're feeling the way they do. And why it's important, Amy's going to talk about it. So 2 things I want you to talk about. One is that, why is it important to get help? Actually, that was the second part of the question, wasn't it? Yeah, that was the second. See, we should have moved forward. That's what I like doing. Move forward. We'll figure it out. So why is it important, and when should people get help? That's a very, very important thing. And around these 2 questions, we can talk about the stigma of therapy, I talked about it a little bit, as in, why don't people ask for help?
So definitely, I think the why, just echoing exactly what you were saying before, a lot of times with our environment or different things going on, we don't realize that there's another option for us, or that we can feel better about particular things. It's almost like we settle for what is without asking questions of, is there something else? Or we get very far down a particular path before asking if there is something better for ourselves, which is not a terrible thing. It's great that you still arrive at the question. So that kind of brings in for the when. There's not ever a bad time for a when to start. So even if you think your life is totally great, nothing going on, it still would be awesome to have somebody that you can go and talk to who's not a part of your life, someone that you don't see every day, that you don't already have sort of emotional attachments to or preconceived ideas of who they are or what's going on. Like, they could bring up anything for you. Personal story for myself, a part of being in the psychotherapy program that I took was that you also needed to be going to therapy yourself. So I signed up for therapy, not because I felt like I needed to, but because I had to for the program. So for the first session when I sat down, I didn't really have much to say. The second time, as soon as my butt hit the cushion of the chair, I just started bawling, and I didn't know, I had no idea why or what was going on. I didn't know what was wrong, but I could not stop crying. And that was the start of my journey to myself that I didn't even realize I needed to be taking. And looking back, I needed to be taking that journey. And it's not even something that I was like, ooh, something's wrong, I need to go seek out someone to talk to. I was there because it was a requirement of my program. So any time can really be a great time. So if something's going on, absolutely. If there's something you can pinpoint that you're holding on to, or that's taking up a lot of real estate in your mind, absolutely seek out someone to speak to. But also, if you've got nothing going on, you might surprise yourself of what could come up if you just sought someone out anyway.
Yeah, no, those are great answers. And when it comes to, I mean, I work with clients, so I'll give a little bit of a difference in terms of coaching and therapy. So what I do as a high performance coach, it's not therapy. I've actually recommended some people for therapy if they needed it, because I saw that I couldn't help them at that point, or they needed help somewhere else. But what from my perspective, in terms of high performance coaching, what I do is I do very similar thing in terms of questioning, because much of the coaching is around self-discovery, discovery around the person's life, my client's life. So I'm asking a lot of questions that directs their mind into a certain direction. And along with it is training that goes with that. But the main difference is that the coaching focuses more on present and future, versus therapy would talk about past a lot, as in why did you go through that and what made you go through that. And I go into that maybe 10% of the time just to get the context, 10, 15, 20% of the time to get the context. And then I move people forward to the present and future, only because I'm trained as a coach, I'm not trained as a therapist, even if I knew what to do. So the point becomes is if I see a client that's more past oriented and they're stuck somewhere and they can't move past that, and they can't resolve it by simple questioning, then I recommend them to a therapist. Why? Because they are trained to handle that. Mm-hmm. And what I've found is with some of my clients is that, like you said, a lot of people have nobody to talk to. We think that there are a lot of people to talk around us, but what ends up happening, I mean, I talk about self-awareness quite a bit. When we get to a point of growth where we are not able to connect with other people around us, that's one aspect of it. When you get to a point where your older friends stop kind of connecting with you in a similar way, your family stops connecting with you in a similar way, that becomes a good point either for therapy or for coaching, because you don't have anybody that can help you with your perspective. I was fortunate that I had a guide, I had a mentor, whether it's a friend, a mentor, a therapist, a coach, whatever it is, you decide. But the point here is that it's a good thing to get help. A lot of us are stuck in our life because all it requires is an outside perspective. Sometimes it doesn't even require professional help, but for a lot of people it does. Mm-hmm. And another thing is that it's not growth, but it's because of a trauma that some people are stuck, because you lost a loved one, or you got fired from your job, or I don't know, something happened back home, or something that was close to you that happened, but you're not able to resolve it, even though you've talked to everybody around you. Then that's a very good point to seek out professional help. And there's nothing wrong with that, because you need that. And it's funny because in terms of our mind, we have these things, we call that in philosophy, we call that hang-up. Our hang-ups are very weird, because if we needed help, let's say, for example, if we needed help to fix our air conditioning, and we don't know anything about air conditioning, what do? We call a professional. If we needed help with our car that breaks down and you don't know anything about your car or much, you go to a mechanic. That's a professional that helps you out. But when it comes to our health and our lifestyle, we forget this. And what is more important than your own self, in your own mind, in your own body? And I find that to be very, very important. And a lot of people when they talk to me, even as a coach, they're like, well, I don't need help. You don't need to need help. A lot of times you need to grow out of where you are.
Yeah.
If you want to progress, if you want to grow in your life, if you want to develop better relationships, if you want to develop a better connection with yourself, you need to seek help sometimes, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
That doesn't make you crazy. That doesn't make you somebody who's weak. That doesn't make you any of that. That just makes you a human being, just like any of us. So that's great part. Did you want to add anything else to that?
I was just gonna say, like, it could be, and it's totally normal, and can be very scary and put you in a very vulnerable place. Like you're saying, if your car doesn't work, to get a mechanic, or air conditioner to get a mechanic, to get to a place where you could admit that maybe you don't know everything about yourself, or there's some things about you that you don't know. That's a very scary thing that could potentially have us feel like we're out of control. Like to say, I don't know who I am, and I don't know myself, and I don't know why I do these things. It's terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying. Or maybe you do know these things about yourself, but you've been pretty successful so far in your life pretending that these things aren't true about you. So there are great things about me, and there are not great things about me. And I'm not fully one and fully the other. Each one doesn't define me. I also can't pretend that the things I don't really like don't exist, because they're going to continue to rule my life if I pretend they're not there. So there's to go with some of the stigma. I feel like another thing behind that is fear. People don't want to find out certain things also.
So let's go to the root of fear. The root of fear, always, nobody knows where it really comes from, but from psychology, we know that a lot of it comes from our childhood. And it's really funny. You don't have to be a psychologist or a therapist to figure this out. All you have to do is go around children. Just a child who's 1 year old, 2 year old. If they want help, what do? They ask for help. Absolutely. They don't hesitate at all. So what happens from the point when they're 2 years old, 3 years old, to the point where they become an adult? What happens in that period? What happens is all you have to do is watch people. People train each other to create problems in each other's lives, and that's not that they have evil intent. It's just a bad cycle for generations that's been going on. So what I used to hear is that if you get help, well, I don't need help. I'm not weak. Boys don't cry. I mean, yeah. I heard that 5 years ago with my own nephew and his dad. But what happens is that it's in every family structure, no matter where you're from. These little negative things train a child to think a certain way. Yep. And a lot of us think that we have grown past that being a child, and this is not to insult anybody, but I can tell you about myself too. There are tendencies that I still have, even as a coach who gets coaching, by the way. That's part of my training as well, is that I have to get coached as well. In my life, what I find is that tendencies that I haven't gotten over from my childhood, a lot of traumas, a lot of hang-ups, a lot of fears, like you said. So these fears develop in those few years within your life. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it helps to talk about it. A lot of times it helps that somebody tells you that it's okay. Other times it helps that you think about it in a more intelligent way, from a different perspective. But that has to be resolved.
Yeah, you can integrate it if you know about it. So it's not like you would find out about this hang up and then want to cut it off, like you would cut off your arm. Yeah. But if you know that this is a hang up that you have, then you can approach it in a different way. So, if you're, this particular environment makes me anxious. Okay, great. Then you can prepare when you're going into that type of an environment so that you feel ready to go into that environment. You don't have to just start avoiding that environment altogether, because you're really going to shut down your life. But you can, so I have 2 very young children. I take a diaper bag everywhere I go, because I know I'm going to need diapers. I'm going to need snacks. I'm going to need drinks. I'm going to need extra clothes. Sure, I can go out without the bag, but I'm going to make every outing a lot more difficult for myself. But if I prepare myself bringing the tools that I'm potentially going to need when I go out, then we all have a much better day.
Yeah, no, that's an amazing concept. And the only way we can be prepared for any situation is if you know what the challenge is to begin with.
Right.
And that's where it begins. And that's one of the hardest things for people to admit that they have a problem, because they think that they're weak. they're not strong enough, or they're not intelligent enough to figure out their own things.
Mhm.
That's actually a more of a hang up, I think, for men than women. but and I've found that personally in my life and with my clients, that they find it very, very difficult to ask for help. But even with a lot of women, it's the same issue, that asking for help becomes a negative thing to do, but it really isn't. And I want to stress that point, because as human beings, Amy brought that up before, is that what makes us human, what defines us as human, is our weaknesses and strengths, our negative side and positive sides.
Mhm.
If you didn't have both sides, you would not be human. Granted, there has to be a balance in there,
Right.
but the point here is that what defines you as a human being is that you have strengths and you have weaknesses. You have negatives and you have positive. There's no human being on earth that doesn't. I haven't run into one yet. Even the great teachers that we follow, that we learn from, if they're honest, they'll admit that they had to grow a lot to get to that point.
Absolutely.
And that's the point. We're all growing. Where we're going, that's a completely different subject. But the point is that for you to grow, you have to let go of those things. And one of the first steps is to admit that you need help.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that is from yourself, from reading a book, whether that is from getting help from a friend, whether that is getting help from a professional. First step is to admit that. And then the second step is to go for that help. And this will be one of the most momentous actions that you will take in your life. I can vouch for that personally, and so many people that I've helped in their lives, and Amy can say the same thing.
Absolutely, yeah.
So that's a great thing. I love that topic, and I'm glad I covered that. I really wanted to cover that because that's very close to me. Because I told Amy that before I went on the interview, that I went through over 10, 12 years of dealing with my challenges myself. And after all of it, I realized that I could have handled all this very, very fast and very quickly if I had gotten professional help. Mm. But because I had the same fears, I had the same thinking patterns in my mind, I didn't get help. And that could have, all the pain and suffering that I went through, that could have been avoided. Not that I regret, because I'll regret that, because you have to go through some processes sometimes to get to where you are. But the fact that I'm here is because I'm that voice now. I experienced that. You don't need to experience that. You can try it out, because there was nobody to tell me that you can get help. There was nobody around me that could tell me that. I remember that you need help. I couldn't even express myself at that time, let alone knowing that. So if you're listening to this, it's okay. All right, let's move on to it's a little intense. Let's make it a little light. So let's move on to the next point. So Amy's going to talk about 3 things you could do, or you can do, to improve your psychological health. Go ahead, Amy.
So the first thing I would mention or talk about would be boundaries. So however that needs to look for a particular person. So if that's physical boundaries, verbal boundaries, whatever it needs to look like. And what I mean by boundaries is just creating space for yourself. So in society, in different cultures, a lot of times people aren't allowed to say no. You have to say yes to everything. You have to be busy. You have to be able to do it all. And there should be a smile on your face, and you shouldn't complain. But we all need boundaries. If you can never say no, your yeses become obsolete. They lose their value, because there's no, your yeses begin to mean nothing, because there's no to balance that out, and you absolutely drain yourself. And if you've been someone who doesn't have boundaries, it's going to be difficult to start laying them down, because your world and the people in it will have been expecting these things of you. But it's for your benefit. You have to be able to say no to different events, anything. You need to be comfortable saying no, and having those boundaries set of like this. You can come this close and that's it. Not in a way of like putting up walls, but in a way of creating space for yourself. That's a huge one. And and if you start setting boundaries and people have a difficult time with it, that's a great time to seek out therapy, because they can help you get comfortable about the setting boundaries. The second thing would be to be honest. So that goes hand in hand, I think, with being able to say no. So sometimes when we say yes, we do mean to say no. So that's an honesty thing. But in just speaking in how you really feel, it's very uncomfortable and can be off-putting to be vulnerable once you start saying how you really feel about different things. But it's so freeing. It's incredibly freeing to be honest and real about how you feel about things, what things mean to you, what you do find valuable and what you don't find valuable, but coming from your heart, not what you imagine people would like to hear you say, but honestly how you feel about different things. We all have different values. We all prioritize different things, and that's totally fine. We're supposed to. That's what makes us unique and who we are. And then the third thing I think, or I feel, would be is having your a space just for yourself. One space that's inside and one space that's outside in nature. So if it's somewhere in your house, or literally if you have to go sit in your closet to just have quiet, or wherever the little chair that when you go sit there, it's just your time for you. Something inside that is your space for you to just read a book, zone out, just to have space for yourself. And then also one outside where you can be out, if it's a park in the city, or if you have a little spot in your backyard, or if you live in an apartment and you have like a balcony of an apartment or a condo, or if you can actually like take a trip and go visit somewhere in nature. But to have a space that's just your space, one that's inside and one that's outside, to just kind of come back to yourself, or rest, or breathe, or just have a second.
Those are amazing points. I love all of them. And those are actually some of the most crucial points, especially when you get to a point where you know that you need to develop your own life, develop your own thinking. So as somebody who does therapy, who does study psychology, who does study the human mind, Amy knows this too, that most of us, and I talk about this quite a bit, most of us are brought up with a certain program. Since our childhood, we are taught to think a certain way. And that's not necessarily a negative thing, but what ends up being negative is that people at a certain age, some people think 6, 7, or 8 years old, you develop the ability to think for yourself. You begin to develop the ability to think for yourself. But the problem is that the societies that we live in, they don't encourage that. For various reasons, it's not encouraged. So what happens is that you live most of your life with those 6 or 7 years of programming, 6 or 7 years of conditioned behavior, whether that is your blind allegiance to your beliefs, or blind allegiance to the people, or to the country, or to the system, to whatever it is. But what the problem with that is that it holds you back as an individual. How does it hold you back? It holds back your uniqueness. It holds back who you truly are. Holds back you connecting to yourself. And all these points that Amy has talked about, they will help you free slowly from that. And none of these are easy, by the way. And anybody who goes on that path, it's one of the most courageous things you can do, to say no to people. And it's not a no in terms of, well, no, I don't want to do it, just as a rebellion without a cause. Not like that, but you decide how you want to live your life. And that connects to honesty. You have to decide how you want to live your life. You have to decide who you are. You have to decide what you want to do. Once you have that vision, once you have created that, then you know what you want to do. And anything that doesn't fit that vision, that has to be a no. And that's one of the hardest things to do, because we're taught since childhood to please everybody, to please everyone around us, to make everybody happy, which in reality, by the way, it doesn't work, because you can't make anybody happy no matter how much you try, because happiness is a very personal thing. That person has to decide. And no matter how much you try to please, and on top of that, your own insecurities about trying to please others to be good enough, that's another story behind it. But the point here is that saying no, being honest with yourself, and even more important, the third point that you said, space. See, I always talk about space for yourself, but I didn't think of it in terms of inside your home and in nature. That's a very good point. Because we spend nowadays, I mean, with the lifestyle that we have, we do spend a lot of time at home. So a lot of us. So have that space within your home, whether that's a room, it's a washroom, wherever it is.
Yeah.
Some people do that. A balcony or your backyard, whatever it is. Spend some time with yourself alone, without any distractions, without your phone, without your TV. Grab a book, or sometimes no book. Just sit there and pay attention to your thoughts. Pay attention to how you feel. Think about the things that you want. That will be one of the most amazing things you can do. And what she also said, that on the outset, spending time in nature. One of the things, I actually did a video recently about that on my Facebook, is that we don't spend enough time in nature. And it's not, the problem with that is that our body comes from nature. We might have created this artificial environment around us, but who we truly are is related to nature somehow. How it's related is everybody's philosophy, but for us to even begin to understand that, you have to spend more time. Aside from all the scientific and historical and all the other benefits of it, just the fact that you're spending time within nature connects you with your own self. And that's very, very important. And and to some people, all this sounds very selfish, that you're just talking about me, but that's not the reality. Because once, think of, I always love this analogy of fill your own cup before you go around trying to help other people. Yeah. Because even when if you're deprived yourself, especially when it comes to your needs, whether they're emotional needs, psychological needs, physical needs, if you try to go help other people, it actually backfires. You end up doing more damage to other people than good. That's why, that's probably one of my best guesses for therapists, is that they have to get therapy themselves. It's because they have to deal with their own problems before they go out, because they are going to project a lot of those problems.
Yeah.
So take care of yourself, whether that's physical, mental, or emotional. Sorry?
You can't give what you don't have. So
yeah, you definitely can. It's like, if you think of it in terms of physical, well, I want to give this person a bunch of clothes, but you don't have clothes that you can give. You can't. I mean, it's simple, it's stupid, but that's how it is. We want to give love, we want to give compassion, we want to be helpful, but we're so caught up in our own problems within ourselves that it's hard. This doesn't mean that you don't help people at all. If you feel like helping, go ahead and help, but don't make it a mission to help people when you're struggling yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Because your mission at that point becomes helping yourself. So did you want to add anything else to that?
I'm not thinking of it, like nothing's coming to mind.
All right. So we kind of summarized it too. We talked about boundary. We actually talked about the stigma around therapy, that if you need help, you should get professional help. If you don't want to get professional help, find somebody who has a higher perspective than you, whether it's a coach, it's a friend, or it's a mentor, whoever it is. Have somebody who you can talk to on a consistent basis, who you can spend time with, who can help you out with that.
I have one thing I could add. It doesn't have to be talk therapy either. There's art therapy where you can draw instead of talking, or you can play with clay. There's play therapy where you literally play. Like, there's so many different styles where it doesn't have to be I feel like part of the stigma is attached to that image of like someone laying on a couch and the person kind of like taking notes. That's so far removed from what it can look like and the options that are out there. So if you're thinking of getting help, don't think that like, well, I don't want to sit and talk to a person about this. You absolutely don't have to. You can do different music. Like, there's musical stuff. There's so many different styles and ways to get in touch with whatever is going on for yourself. It doesn't have to be just having a conversation with somebody and working it out that way, especially if it's things in your sort of subconscious or that you don't totally know what it is. It's so much easier to just scribble an angry picture than it is to sit and try and search and find what it is that's wrong. Then you have that picture, you can take it and look at it, see what comes up after days or weeks or months of time. Like there's so many options of ways to get help too. It doesn't have to look a particular way.
Yeah, you brought up a great point, because when you talk about therapists, there's not one type of therapist. There's not one type of coach. There's not one type of professional that can help you. So there are different modalities of it. And that's why you do your research and figure out what suits your lifestyle the best. What do you want to do? So for me, it's one of the reasons that I started, a lot of people might not know, as somebody, I mean, I don't have to, as a coach, I don't have to be on social media. I mean, I can get my clients through referrals, but the fact that I went on social media, that was a huge move for me. And that was a therapeutic move, because I always, since I could remember, wanted to express myself, especially my thoughts. And for me, not being able to do that most of my life was a huge hang up for me. And that was a big move for me, to go on social media and be open and talk about my personal life. And that took a lot of courage from me. And I was telling Amy before that the first time I did a 2-minute video, I just froze. And it took a lot of videos and keep going towards it for me to be able to talk properly in front of people. And that was very therapeutic for me. And whenever I talk to clients, a lot of my clients, what helps them a lot of time is going towards the things that they enjoy, whether that's painting, drawing, playing music, or other things. In the same manner, therapy doesn't have to be just talking. It can be you walking in nature, you going for retreats, you doing painting classes, you going to gym. I mean, a lot of things can be therapy, but the point is you have to recognize that you need help sometimes. Mm-hmm. And I can guarantee you that when you need help, a lot of times you know that you need help. What stops you is your thoughts. That's given to you, by the way, by the society that you live in. So let's stop it there. I want to thank Amy for coming here on my channel and giving us her amazing thoughts. And I learned a lot. I took a bunch of notes. Hopefully you guys did too. And we talked about very important points. And these are things that most people don't talk about in their day-to-day life, but they're very, very crucial in terms of your growth, in terms of your happiness, in terms of your success. So hopefully you enjoyed it. If you have any questions whatsoever, you can ask me or Amy. You can post your comments below and I'll get Amy to answer it for you. Or she'll also give you her emails as well. Before I go to Amy, I want to just give my offer to you guys. So I usually offer this. If you want to develop a life where you want more clarity within your life about who you are, what you want to do, what your success looks like, if you want to raise your level of energy, mental, physical, and emotional energy, if you want to develop more courage, deal with your fears in a better way, if you want to become more productive in your life, get things done, if you want to become more influential in your personal and professional life, then you can take advantage of this amazing offer that I'm giving you. So all you have to do is go to the link that I provide, which is going to be faisalinsan.p//coaching. And there you can read about it. It'll give you all the details. And underneath, you just have to fill out this questionnaire. It'll take you some time because that questionnaire lets me know whether I can help you and whether you need this coaching or not. And if I see that you're the right fit, you'll get a 90-minute free strategy session. We can do the session just like this if you're far away. A lot of my clients are in different places. Actually, my clients are around the world. But we can also do it in person if you're close to me in Kitchener, Ontario. Some people do travel here for this. But the point is that you just have to fill out that questionnaire. And if I see that we're the right fit, then we can do a 90-minute free strategy session in which you'll learn how to become more clear, become more energized in your life, mentally, physically, and emotionally, become more productive, more courageous, and more influential in your life. And I'm going to go over to Amy, who's going to tell you how you can get in touch with her if you want her services, or if you have any questions from her.
So at this time, it would just be through email. So my email is vanooyenamy@gmail.com. So VANOOYENAMY@gmail.com.
Okay, that's going to be while you're talking, that's going to be in the video. Underneath it, it's going to show up, and it's also going to be in the information section underneath, so you can just copy and paste it. Also, the link that I gave you, that's going to show up here, and it's also going to be information section underneath the video. So make sure you like and share this video if you found this to be helpful, so I can help other people in their personal and professional lives, and somebody else might need this message. And if you have any questions or comments, please post those comments and questions below. Until next time, have a wonderful week. Thanks, Amy, very much for coming over here.
Yeah, thank you.
No problem.